Hi, I'm Alex Leventhal from PrepMBA, and I want to talk to you today about crafting compelling MBA career goals. Before I do that, let me tell you a little bit about my background. I run a boutique consultancy, and I really help people from all over the globe. I went to Harvard Business School, class of '98, and this is my 11th year in the industry. I still love helping young people navigate this very competitive but rewarding process. I came from industry, working as a senior executive at some big companies like Johnson & Johnson and Siebel Systems, and I also worked at some very successful tech startups. I'm a regular lecturer at the Harvard Club, and I'm based in Los Angeles. You know, crafting compelling MBA career goals is such a great starting point in your application process. Without these, you will quickly find yourself at a loss in certain key situations, like you're at an MBA information session, interacting with a school officer. You're trying to tackle some of the classic career goal questions from Columbia and Wharton. You're in an interview, and the interviewer asks you why you want to get an MBA. Well, if you don't have compelling career goals, you won't have a prism through which to answer that question. Now, I've been helping clients for 11 years, and I've developed a point of view about career goals that for me, when I work with clients, it's really not just simply about jobs, but it's about mission and purpose. Why is that? At the end of the day, nobody really cares that you want to get ahead, get promoted, become a vice president, make more money. They care. People are attracted to people with a sense of mission and purpose in business. And if you can achieve that, you will create emotional interest in your candidacy. And I will tell you more about that later. This is such an important topic that with my private clients, we do a lot of exercises early on to tackle this issue, and we revisit it repeatedly until we're sure we have compelling goals. Now, once you establish these goals, you won't need to tweak them for each school. I know some admissions consultants believe that to be the case. I don't. There are some exceptions to that, and we can talk about that later. Let me lay out what we're going to talk about today. First, we're going to talk about why you even need career goals. Second, we're going to talk about some common mistakes to avoid. Third, we're going to actually get into how to craft compelling career goals. And lastly, I'll offer some final tips and comments. Let's get to work. So why do we even need career goals? Well, it's unavoidable. All applications are going to ask for your career goals in one form or another. Sometimes essay questions deal directly with them. On almost every application form these days, you have to share your career goals. Certainly in the interviews, your career goals can come up, and when they ask why MBA, that's a logical tie to career goals, so you have a prism from which to see why you need an MBA. And so ultimately, career goals become the nucleus for most applications. And career goals are a way to differentiate yourself versus other candidates. If I'm coming from a well-traveled segment, let's say I'm an Indian male, and I want to get into management consulting, and that's my goal, how different does that sound? So many people want to pursue management consulting, but in fact, if you've had some healthcare experience, talking about a consulting firm like LEK that has a specialty in healthcare will be more specific. Or for example, if you're into data analysis, data analytics, business intelligence, which is a really growing field, talking about Opera Solutions, a boutique management consulting firm in New York, is going to be more specific than just talking about management consulting. And you will differentiate yourself versus others because you've done research and showed that research. To talk about emotional interest in your candidacy, I often use a metaphor about two sisters. Now, I'm happily married. I have a great family life with 2 kids. But if I went back and I was still dating, imagine that I was going on a date with 2 sisters. Both of them are smart. They went to great schools. Both of them are equally beautiful. Sister number 1 got out of Harvard, let's say, as an undergrad, and worked in investment banking for 2 years. She loved the adrenaline and the high energy, but she wasn't really sure that was for her. and some friends were working at a prestigious consulting firm, management consulting firm. So she's doing that now. She doesn't like to travel so much. She likes the work, but she's really not sure what she wants to do. But some of her friends are applying to top business schools, and she's going to as well. Now you meet sister number two. Sister number two, equally beautiful and smart. Maybe she went to Yale undergrad. And ever since she was a kid, she really loved animals. In fact, the family used to foster rescue dogs, and she loved that so much that she decided to go to vet school when she was young. She actually did that. She went to a great vet school, maybe at Penn. She finished, and she was in private practice for 2 years. But she's seen an opportunity to create a different type of business practice, maybe a virtual practice, and she's interested in trying to replicate this in terms of a chain concept. Now, human nature is, I'm going to like sister number two more. And why is that? Because sister number two has a sense of purpose, and you can see her mission played out over time organically in her background. Business schools also want to court sister number two versus sister number one. And that's my point. Career goals also become important because they also determine how you'll research your schools. Sometimes researching schools is a really tough job. There's so many things to understand. But if you have good career goals, now you have a prism through which you can start to understand schools. For example, if I'm interested in healthcare, I can reach out to the president of the healthcare club and have a conversation about upcoming conferences, what's going on, how my background may be useful. And then I can replay that information in the essays and in the interview process, but all because I targeted my school research to something specific. Career goals can also help you justify why you need to get an MBA. If you're an accountant and you want to just become a senior accountant and that's what you're going to write about, well, you don't need an MBA to do that. If you're a commodities trader and you want to become a rise in commodities trading, again, is an MBA really useful? No, you want to choose career goals that will justify why you need an MBA. And that also helps because they're trying to determine who really will benefit from this education, who's seen what their needs are, and that the skills that they need and the judgment map to an MBA. Why else do you need career goals? Well, because quite pragmatically, MBA programs want candidates to get jobs, so their employment rates are competitive for the rankings. So you want to choose career goals that make sense and will pass a certain reality test. Like, for example, a lot of people want to be product managers in high tech. Well, what if it interests you, but you've never taken any classes, you don't know how to code, you haven't worked at a tech firm? Is that really a realistic goal for you? It's probably not. Something to avoid. Whether or not you can do that down the road may be up to you, but it may be better to focus on something else for your career goals. What are some of the mistakes that people make with career goals? Well, one of them is being honest and saying, look, I don't really have specific career goals yet, and that's precisely why I want to do an MBA, to explore different opportunities. Now, that may be tempting, and it may be true, but it will show a lack of direction, and I don't advise that. As I argued before, programs want to court applicants who have a mission versus people that just want to get ahead or are thinking narrowly about a generic job. You know, schools are also very aware that not everyone has specific goals, and that's okay. I think part of researching, identifying, articulating goals, and staying with those goals throughout the process from the essays to the interviews does show a certain amount of resolve and logic, and they're testing for that as well. So I think that's another reason why they ask for career goals. Another mistake that can be made is that sometimes people present career goals that are really general, that aren't specific enough. Like we've talked about, I want to be a management consultant and then go into VC. Well, a lot of people do, but what kind of management consultant do you want to be based on your experience? And what kind of VC? And that's a big jump. It's very hard to get a job in VC. Most people that get a job in VC have already worked in banking or PE or VC. So if you haven't, again, maybe that's not the best thing to push. What's another mistake that people make? Well, sometimes people present career goals that really have no relation to what they've done professionally or what they've done off the side of their desk or as an undergraduate, and so they kind of come out of left field. Now, building on professional experience can be a strong move, and schools want grads in a variety of industries and functions. So don't feel the need, because a lot of people are talking, for example, about social impact. If that's not in your experience and background and resume, don't feel the need to push that. I often see people will overlook, for example, I was working with a client who had software engineering expertise and experience and then moved into kind of a business analytics role, and he felt the need to change that. And I said, well, wait a second. There's so many employers that need good business intelligence executives, and so many business schools are responding to that with new courses and majors. Push that. But career goals can also come from outside of professional experience. They can come from an undergraduate thesis that you've done. Perhaps one of your parents is involved in an industry, and so you know a lot about that industry. Perhaps in your free time you have an extracurricular that touches on a different industry. These are all fine things. It doesn't have to be that you're working in something professionally to posit career goals that are different. And then other mistakes that I see often are people who present very grandiose, high-level visions. Like, for example, I want to help the U.S. healthcare system become more efficient. Wow, that's a huge goal. We all know that as a percent of GDP, U.S. healthcare spending is ridiculous. We need to do something. But saying you want to fix that in a general way is very sophomoric, and it's not really advancing any specific argument. It's very naive. Versus picking a segment of healthcare that you have some expertise or knowledge about, like scorecard healthcare, being able to look at service providers, for example, who give knee surgeries in the US. And right now there's no kind of common data source that reviews all providers who do that. And that's becoming an important part of, will be an important part of healthcare in the US, giving visibility and access. Insurance plans want to know, consumers want to know who does a good knee surgery, and there's startups now that are playing in this kind of scorecard healthcare segment. Having career goals that align to that is much more interesting than I want to save healthcare in the US. I also hear sometimes people come from a given country and they want to create more jobs in their home country. Well, that's amazing. Again, very noble, but it's not really very specific, and there's no path to doing that. I want to be a technology disruptor. Okay, there are a lot of companies that are disrupting industries through technology, but that's not really a specific plan. Knowing about a certain industry that's ripe for disruption because there's no internet play already, and talking about that if you have a specific entrepreneurial idea is fine, but you just don't want to talk in general about my goal is to be a technology disruptor. Okay, so now that we understand why you need career goals and what some of the mistakes are to avoid, let's get down to the real work here. We want to craft career goals. We want to help you understand how to do that. And the best way is through some case examples. That's what a Harvard MBA would do. That's how I was trained. That's what I use in my practice. And let's talk about some examples. This first example is Nikhil. His name was not Nikhil. I've just changed the name. And this is an example of someone that is staying in the same industry. But Nikhil works for Warner Brothers in their music division in a business development role. He does not have a computer science background. He's not a technologist. He's not in a technology role, but he loves technology. He's taught himself Python and some other languages on the side. He got into the music industry because his father is a jazz musician, not a famous household name musician, but a jazz musician. But his father has seen also his earnings drop over time in terms of his recording sales. So my client Nikhil was very interested in the industry, and everyone knows kind of what's happened to the music industry over the last 10 to 15 years. People used to buy CDs. Then there was a lot of file sharing and Napster. Fewer CDs were being sold. Places like Tower Records and HMV were closing. Apple started to sell individual songs. Recording artists really making less money through music recordings and making more money in terms of touring. But anyway, Nikhil didn't know exactly what he wanted to do, but he loved music and he saw problems related to protecting intellectual property. So the more we talked about his career purpose, and you see it stated here, he wanted to be a leader in protecting intellectual property through technology. And of course, that's very media driven. Notice how that's not a job. That's an area of interest that he has, a mission. And there can be many different targeted jobs that can fulfill that mission, but we chose ones that are listed here. Post MBA, since he had been working in business development at a media company, he thought a broadening move would be to work at a major consulting firm in their media practice, so he could gain experience in multiple segments, not just in music, but in film, in educational software, and he'd want to choose a consulting firm that had particular expertise in media like BCG does. Again, being specific. And long term, he wanted to join Warner Brothers or Sony as a high-level executive, comfortable with digital strategy, corporate partnerships, pricing models, security. Not everyone posits entrepreneurial goals for this process. Case in point, Nikhil is talking about staying in industry. And when you see MBA focus on this slide, what that is imagine that Nikhil was applying to Wharton. Even though Wharton has a famous finance offering or they have an interesting sports management kind of focus, it would be silly for Nikhil to start talking about that given all that we've done with career purpose. So he would talk about courses in corporate strategy, joining Wharton's equivalent of the version of the Media and Entertainment Club, checking out their West Coast campus with ties to Silicon Valley, targeting certain digital media professors. So everything follows from the career purpose, and there's a sense of mission. Now we move to Katie. In this example, Katie is a career changer. Katie was working in real estate finance, not for a real estate developer, but for a firm that had a large portfolio of commercial properties and buying and selling. And she really enjoyed her work in the analytical frameworks, but she didn't want to continue in that, and she really wanted to operate a business. And to be honest, she didn't know exactly what she wanted to do. But as we looked at her bio sheet, which is what I used to gather information, and her resume and so forth, it was clear that she loved food. She was taking organic cooking classes in her free time in New York, formal classes at a great place. She had started a culinary club in college. Her grandparents had had an Asian grocery store, and she worked in that store when she was growing up. So she had a lot of tie to food, and she didn't really think that was serious enough for an MBA. But the more we talked about it, the more we realized it was kind of an interest of hers to use her love of food to create healthier options for the Asian community, because there are more and more problems of diabetes and obesity in that community. That's a career purpose. That's a mission. And in terms of, targeted jobs post MBA, she thought that she could work at a major grocer like an H.E. Butt, or if you're in Europe, Marks and Spencer, or Leblanc in Canada, to work in category management and try and learn something about the grocery business, about ethnic merchandising. And long term, her goal was to start a chain of healthy Asian grocery stores, much different than the one she had worked in as a kid, that was filled with dry foods, fatty foods, and not particularly healthy foods. And again, in terms of MBA focus, Katie would start talking about, for example, if she was applying to Columbia, even though Columbia has prowess in finance, she's trying to move away from finance. So it would be better if she talked about Columbia's version of the Food and Restaurant Club and talked about retail management courses when she's in her essays and interviews, so that everything ties in to the career purpose. And then the last example we have is of Keith, and this is a family business example. Keith was working in investment banking in New York in an infrastructure group. And as some background, his family business in Russia made train car interiors, and had done quite well for a while, but they were all government contracts. And that was starting to lessen, and a 500-person business was losing sales, and this was a problem. And he had talked to his dad about the need to expand into other transportation segments like airplanes and yachts, and the need to grow the business outside of Russia and pursue international contracts. So rather than just work for a family business, there's a career purpose. Keith wants to help his father modernize this manufacturing family business, grow sales through new products and geographical expansion. So post MBA, he wasn't ready to be CEO yet. He wanted to lead efforts as the head of international sales for the family business and get into new markets. And long term, when his father was ready to retire, become the CEO and also help other family members contribute to the venture or manage corporate, family governance. So again, for MBA Focus, he would be interested in an MBA program's Family Business Club and family business courses and global projects, given that he's going to spread the business internationally. So again, there's a career purpose. So what are some of the takeaways here that we've learned? Career purpose, good career goals. It's not just about a job. It's about a mission. It's about an area of interest. It's about, if you're an entrepreneur, building a better mousetrap to solve a consumer problem. If you're talking about healthcare, it's not just all of healthcare, but it's a specific area of healthcare that speaks to you based on personal experience, family experience, something that you've learned at a conference or through your circle. Or it's about a new trajectory for a family business in decline to save jobs. So this is an important thing about career purpose, that there's a sense of mission beyond yourself and just making more money. Business leaders ultimately solve problems. They build better mousetraps. They help industries that are in peril. They see opportunities on the horizon. And this is what we want to try and do with your career goals. Career purposes also create emotional energy and interest in your candidacy. And we've discussed that. The more specific they are and there's a sense of mission, you will stand out. These people are reading, these admissions people are reading so many, and the goal is to kind of stand out. Similarly, when you watch a movie, in the first 20 minutes, you make a decision if you enjoy the protagonist and his or her journey, or when you read a novel after 50 pages, you may make a decision. These evaluators are trying to understand you as a protagonist, as an applicant, and they want to be emotionally tied to your journey. We've also learned that there should be an organic trail that the evaluator can see from your background. This isn't something, your career goals, that should be out of thin air. And as we've discussed, that doesn't mean you've had to have worked in this industry. You can have something that you've been involved with off the side of your desk through an extracurricular, through a family member, but there has to be some organic trail here. The other thing that's important is, don't choose a popular MBA career purpose that's not supported by your resume. And I've listed a few here. Every year I hear some people that are interested, for example, in ed tech. It's a hot area. And that's great. If you've worked as a teacher, if you've worked at a PE firm that's done some ed tech deals. But if you don't have enough experience in there, just because it's interesting to you and there's nothing to tie to, maybe choose something else. This gets us to the question of, where do you research career goals? Well, my suggestion to you is, when you're thinking about crafting your career goals, try and come up with 2 to 3 career purposes. Be open that you'll want to research. Obviously, if you really know what you want to do, that's terrific. You're miles ahead. But some people may want to come up with a couple of different ones to research. And when you're researching, of course, general news searches, Google searches about a company that interests you, a segment of an industry that interests you. Of course, going to industry publications and blogs are critical, so you can learn about different industries and segments of industries. Going to MBA program websites is incredibly helpful as well. You can see, for example, if you're interested in a segment of the energy industry, you can go to an MBA program's Energy Club website and see a conference that's happened or is upcoming and see what companies are coming. You can look at employment reports to see who in the energy industry has hired MBA grads from a particular school and get ideas there on cool companies to follow. Of course, always be networking with your circle and reach out and learn new things about your potential career goals. And of course, your admissions consultant, he or she should be able to help you craft career goals and help you guide in terms of your research. So let's go over some final tips here for your career goals. Don't feel that you have to present career goals that are social impact or nonprofit based. And the reason why I say this is that every year people say to me, hey, I think business schools are looking for people to change the world, and I have to have something that's not selfish, and it has to be nonprofit based and social impact based. That's just not true. I mean, the private sector employs the majority of MBA grads, and the private sector needs innovation, mission, and entrepreneurship as well. So if you have goals that are NGO related, fine, but don't feel the pressure to have that. Another thing is you can change your career goals for a given school if your story is less in sync with a school's educational strengths or their recruiting kind of prowess. Now, what I said to you in the beginning of the presentation is you don't need to change your career goals for every school, and that's true. But if you're applying to NYU because you really want to be in New York and you're interested in healthcare, NYU may not offer what Wharton does. So you may want to consider that. And if you're applying to Haas, they don't have as much of a strength in investment banking as, let's say, Columbia does. So you may want to think about your career goals from a tech perspective. And then the last thing I'll say is that, choose a career plan that's appropriately ambitious to warrant an MBA. Not every career plan you will need an MBA, and they're sensitive to that. So if you're an investment banker and you've already been working for 5 years and you're at the VP level and you want to stay in investment banking post MBA, AgComs may not believe that you actually need an MBA to do that. You're already doing pretty well. Or if you're an accountant working in a corporate control office for a corporation, you need ambitious goals. Maybe you want to target a broader finance role in corporate development where you're doing M&A. So those goals warrant an MBA and the kinds of skills and judgment that you'll learn. Thanks for joining me for this presentation about MBA career goals. I listed my contact information. Please get in touch with me if you want personal, customized help in crafting your MBA goals and, of course, your overall applications. Thank you very much.